January 14th, 1943. Guadalcanal. The humid air hangs heavy with the smell of mud, cordite, and rotting palm fronds. Second Lieutenant John George of the 132nd Infantry crawls beneath a tangle of shattered banana leaves, pressing his cheek against the damp soil as a Japanese sniper's bullet snaps overhead. His men are pinned down. They've already lost 8 Americans in a few brutal hours, and every time someone so much as raises a helmet on a stick, another round cracks through the jungle. The enemy is invisible, deadly, and patient. George clutches the rifle no one in his unit thought he should bring. A civilian sporting rifle. A mail-order special he'd purchased years earlier through a catalog and tuned himself. It wasn't Army issue, it wasn't standard, it wasn't even military grade. Officers scoffed at it. Some laughed at the skinny stock, the glossy bluing, the long hunting scope mounted on top. They said it would fog up, break, or get him killed. They told him to stick to the M1 or pick up a standard Springfield like everyone else. But today, hiding in the steaming undergrowth of Guadalcanal, that so-called toy is about to do what no regulation rifle has managed all morning: win a sniper duel on the jungle's own unforgiving terms. John George wasn't a reckless amateur clinging to a comfort object. Before the war, he was one of the sharpest competitive marksmen in the Midwest, a shooter who had already earned national attention for his uncanny ability to read wind, foliage, and distance. As a teenager, he lived for marksmanship meets, small-town fairs, state championships, and long-range tournaments where he regularly outshot older, more seasoned competitors. His talent came from discipline, not luck, and every dollar he saved went toward equipment. When he bought this rifle, a beautifully balanced Winchester Model 70 sporting rifle, he treated it not as a hunting tool, but as an extension of his own senses. Years later, when he deployed to the Pacific, he knew exactly what he wanted beside him. Not the bulky Garand with its loud action, not the older Springfield with iron sights. He wanted precision. He wanted consistency. He wanted the rifle he knew in his bones. The Army wasn't thrilled. Military-issue rifles were built for battlefield durability, not microscopic accuracy. The Model 70 was considered a civilian luxury, delicate and unsuitable for combat. Its slim stock seemed flimsy, its scope too fragile for the tropics. But George knew better. He knew the smooth bolt throw, the perfect trigger, and the crisp optics made it the most accurate rifle he had ever handled. So he brought it anyway, wrapped, padded, and protected every mile of the journey into the steaming heart of the Pacific. Now, as Japanese snipers tear through the treetops like ghosts, George wipes a bead of sweat from his eye and raises the rifle. The jungle vibrates with danger. Cicadas scream. Mortars rumble in the distance. Every color seems alive and shifting. Japanese camouflage is nearly flawless: burlap, mud, and artfully arranged branches that make a sniper blend into the very skeleton of the island. But George has studied their tactics. He knows their preferred angles, their decoy tricks, their tree perch habits. He moves slowly toward the half-collapsed coconut log bunker that the platoon had abandoned earlier. Most believed it was too exposed. George, however, notices something others missed. The bunker offers a narrow slit of sightline up a ridge where the enemy has been firing. Most men see danger. He sees geometry. The first sniper reveals himself not through movement, but through stillness. A patch of darkness on a branch where the rest of the tree sways. The faintest irregular outline against the layered greens. George controls his breathing. The world narrows to the scope's reticle. He pauses, presses the trigger, smooth, steady, flawless, and the shot cracks across the valley. The Japanese sniper tumbles from his tree perch, and for a moment, the jungle holds its breath. Then a second round slashes past George's ear, so close he feels the air move. The enemy had indeed placed snipers in pairs. The shot wasn't aimed at him, yet. It was a warning. They knew someone had broken the stalemate, and George had just become their highest priority target. Over the next 4 days, the duel turns into something far bigger than one man with a mail-order rifle. It becomes a chess match against some of the most skilled shooters the Japanese fielded. These are trained marksmen of the Imperial Japanese Army's elite units, masters of concealment who prefer to shoot from high nest positions, underground spider holes, and deceiving angles. They almost never fire twice from the same spot. They are clever, disciplined, and accustomed to dominating the battlefield. George is now hunting them on their own turf. On the second morning, before the sun fully breaches the thick clouds, a sniper fires from a patch of ferns that look too symmetrical. George, studying the pattern through his scope, catches what others miss, a faint color mismatch where burlap meets leaf. He fires once and the fern patch collapses. Later that afternoon, a third sniper hits a runner attempting to deliver ammo. The shot comes from the side of a banyan tree, but the trunk is too thick. The shot wasn't fired from the tree, it was from behind it. George crawls through mud and ants, circling the tree at an agonizingly slow pace, keeping his silhouette hidden. He spots a sliver of movement, barely visible, just a glint from a rifle barrel hidden behind a twist of roots. One shot. Silence. By the end of the second day, the whispers begin. Men talk about George's strange civilian rifle like it's a mythical tool. They marvel at its reach, its precision, and its uncanny ability to penetrate camouflage. But George knows it's not the rifle alone. It's the synergy between man and machine, skill and tool, discipline and instinct. On the third day, Japanese tactics evolve. They deploy decoys, helmets perched on sticks, straw mannequins draped in jackets, shapes intended to provoke rash shots. George refuses to be baited. He doesn't fire until he sees something organic. The shift of a shoulder, the faint rise of breath, the subtle angular change of a human form trying to remain a rock. When he finally pulls the trigger, it's because he's absolutely certain. Kill number 8 comes from 350 yards, an absurdly long distance in a jungle labyrinth. A Japanese sniper had hidden inside the carcass of a blasted tree trunk, using the splintered wood as natural cover. To everyone else, it looked like part of the forest. But George noticed that one sliver of the trunk didn't sway like the others. The rifle kicked gently, another ghost erased. By now, officers who once mocked the hunting rifle can no longer ignore the evidence. The Model 70, with its tune-up barrel and catalog-bought scope, is outperforming regulation hardware by a mile. It is light, precise, dependable, and perfectly suited for a marksman who trained for years to control every variable. On the fourth day, the stakes reach their peak. Only a few enemy snipers remain, and these are the experts, the ones who've studied American movement, who've survived months of brutal fighting, and who shoot with terrifying discipline. The last 3 duels are nearly catastrophic. One sniper nearly hits George as he relocates between 2 fallen logs. Another sniper nearly clips his spotter. The tension becomes suffocating. Each shot counts. Every breath matters. George waits, sometimes for hours, for the enemy to make the tiniest mistake. The 10th sniper reveals himself when a pair of butterflies land on the branch above him, then abruptly take flight, spooked by the faint vibration of a shifting rifle. George sees the tremor in the foliage, tracks it, fires, and the threat disappears. The 11th and final sniper is the most dangerous. This one is patient, brilliant, and hides within a fortified spider hole. His barrel protrudes through a knothole in a mangled bamboo pile. George studies it for nearly an hour, watching for signs of life. When the sniper finally adjusts his aim to target a machine gun crew, George doesn't hesitate. He fires through 2 layers of bamboo, a shot made blind except for intuition and trajectory. The jungle goes still. The last sniper is gone. In 4 days, John George has eliminated 11 enemy snipers, each one a master of their craft, each one threatening to halt American progress across the island. His rifle, once ridiculed, becomes legendary. His commanding officers, once skeptical, begin to ask questions about civilian rifles, optics mounting, zeroing techniques, and competitive shooting discipline. George writes everything down. He documents wind reading, foliage penetration, camouflage detection, and the value of a marksman who can think independently. These notes will later form the basis for parts of his now famous post-war book, Shots Fired in Anger, one of the most respected first-hand accounts of Pacific theater combat ever written. George's success fundamentally changes how American units perceive snipers. Before Guadalcanal, many saw snipers as a niche role. After George's 4-day duel, commanders across the Pacific push harder for well-trained marksmen, better optics, and rifles built for individual shooters rather than one-size-fits-all doctrine. What George proved was simple. Precision and mastery matter more than standardization. Skill matters more than equipment. A man who knows his weapon intimately, every vibration, every nuance, can outshoot even the deadliest enemy snipers hiding in the darkest corners of the jungle. When the firing finally stops and the jungle settles into its uneasy silence, George remains still for several minutes, his cheek pressed to the rifle's warm stock, his heartbeat gradually slowing. The Model 70's barrel is smudged with mud. Its once polished bluing is scratched and sweat-streaked. The scope lens is fogged at the edges from humidity. It looks nothing like the proud sporting rifle that once sat on a shelf back home. But in these 4 days, it has become something far more important. It has become proof that the right combination of skill and precision can prevent entire platoons from being cut apart. When George finally stands and returns to his unit, the men open a path for him, not ceremonially, not formally, but instinctively, like they're making room for someone who just did something none of them fully understand yet. They ask him timid questions. How he saw the snipers, how he knew where to look, how he stayed so calm while they were pinned down. George answers quietly, almost modestly. He explains that sniping is more about interpreting the landscape than gambling on guesses. It's about understanding how a human silhouette looks when it tries not to look human. He tells them that a sniper's greatest weapon is patience, not trigger speed, and that a rifle, no matter how expensive or crude, is only as effective as the mind guiding it. Word spreads through the regiment. Officers who once rolled their eyes at the mail-order deer gun now want to examine it, heft it, and look through the hunting scope that performed so flawlessly against an enemy known for near invisibility in the undergrowth. George allows them to inspect it, but only under careful supervision. He explains that the rifle's accuracy isn't magic. It's the result of tuning, bedding, careful adjustment, and years of intimate familiarity. It is a precision instrument, not a battlefield club. The higher-ups begin to realize something deeper. The Army's current sniper doctrine, borrowed from World War I and shaped by European battlefields, is poorly suited for the Pacific. Jungle warfare requires shooters who understand concealment intuitively. It requires rifles that maintain accuracy in chaotic terrain. Most importantly, it requires men who think like hunters, not soldiers firing volleys at masked targets. George writes detailed notes during the aftermath, clear, methodical observations on everything he encountered. He documents the movements of Japanese snipers, their firing angles, their favorite hides, the way they bait American patrols by intentionally missing with their first shot to lure medics or curious soldiers into sightlines. He writes about the way sunlight filters through layered jungle canopy and how a sniper can time his movement when a cloud passes overhead. He writes about the sound difference between a rifle fired from an elevated perch and one fired from a burrow. He explains how Japanese snipers use silence like a weapon, waiting hours for one mistake from their prey. Every word he writes becomes invaluable. Commanders pass his notes down to new units arriving on the island. Platoons begin training with these lessons, learning to detect unnatural patterns in vines, learning to look for the faint shimmer of oil on a rifle barrel, learning to trust their instincts when the jungle seems a little too still. George's experience, distilled into practical teaching, starts saving lives long before the battle for Guadalcanal is officially over. When the Marines and Army finally secure the island, George is reassigned to help develop enhanced marksmanship programs. He travels among units, rifles slung across his back, teaching young soldiers that accuracy isn't an accident, and patience is more lethal than any bayonet charge. Some of them marvel that one man using a rifle bought through a mail-order catalog could shape new tactics for an entire theater of war. They ask him why he bothered bringing his Model 70 when the Army already provided rifles. George always answers the same way, because it was the rifle he trusted. He trusted the feel of the bolt sliding into battery, the consistency of the trigger brake, the clarity of the scope, even in the suffocating humidity of the Pacific. While others laughed at its fancy civilian looks, George knew that any edge in accuracy could be the difference between spotting a sniper first or dying before you ever see him. And the results spoke for themselves. 11 Japanese snipers, each one lethal, disciplined, and expertly hidden, had been eliminated by a man carrying a rifle they all mocked. These were not ordinary soldiers. Japanese snipers earned reputations as some of the most cunning marksmen of the war. Their camouflage skills were legendary. Their patience bordered on supernatural. And yet George found each one of them. Not because his rifle was glamorous, but because it was precise and because he was willing to crawl through mud, thorns, and fire to put that precision where it was needed. After the war, George returned home, but he carried the Pacific with him. He wrote Shots Fired in Anger, a book that became a goldmine of first-hand insight into jungle warfare, weapons performance, and the psychology of sniping. Unlike many war memoirs, George's work focused not on glorifying combat, but on analyzing it. He broke down firefights with the eye of a scientist and the soul of a hunter. He wrote about equipment failures, humidity challenges, psychological stress, and the brutal chess-like duels between opposing snipers. His book became essential reading not just for historians but for military instructors refining sniper doctrine for Korea and Vietnam. In his writing, George emphasized something few had articulated clearly before, that sniping is not merely shooting. It is the art of perception. It is learning to sense the faint contradictions in nature, the way a branch bends unnaturally under weight, the way a shadow lingers a fraction too long. And it is the ability to wait, endlessly, motionlessly, until the moment is perfect. His civilian rifle, the one he'd ordered years earlier through a catalogue, eventually found its way into museums and military collections as an artifact of both personal courage and tactical evolution. Its slim stock, once dismissed as fragile, became a symbol of what a skilled marksman can accomplish when unshackled from rigid bureaucracy. The story spread among shooting communities, competitive circles, and military schools. The tale of the man who trusted his instincts over regulation and reshaped sniper tactics in the process. In later years, when George spoke to young marksmen, he told them that equipment matters, but mastery matters more. A rifle is only as effective as its operator's ability to see the battlefield differently. He reminded them that confidence doesn't come from others' approval. It comes from dedication and understanding. He told them to question assumptions, test everything, and always be prepared to rely on themselves when the moment of truth arrives. The 11 snipers he defeated in those 4 days on Guadalcanal are not just numbers. They represent American lives saved, movements enabled, and battles turned. Without George's skill and his inappropriate rifle, entire squads could have been decimated. Wounded men might never have been evacuated. Critical supply lines could have been severed. His precision made the difference between paralysis and momentum on a battlefield where a single sniper could stall a company for hours. As the decades passed, military historians began recognizing the significance of George's actions with greater clarity. He wasn't just a footnote. He was an early pioneer of what modern forces call designated marksman, a role that blends the precision of a sniper with the flexibility of an infantryman. He was proof that individualized equipment, when paired with exceptional training, could outperform standard-issue gear in specialized situations. And the Model 70 itself, once a humble hunting rifle available to anyone who cared enough to order it, became legendary in its own right. Its accuracy, its smooth action, and its reliability under pressure contributed to the U.S. military eventually adopting the Model 70 as a sniper platform in later conflicts. What George demonstrated with one personal rifle effectively influenced procurement decisions that shaped American sniping for decades. In the end, the laughter that greeted his mail-order rifle faded into memory, replaced by respect, awe, and a permanent place in military doctrine. The skeptics who mocked him came to understand the truth. Sometimes innovation doesn't come from committees or arsenals. Sometimes it comes from one man, one idea, and one tool perfectly suited to the challenge at hand. John George didn't set out to change the way the Pacific War was fought. He simply trusted his training, honored his craft, and believed in the rifle he knew better than any other. But in doing so, he rewrote the story of what a sniper could accomplish in the jungles of World War II. He showed that precision can break paralysis. He showed that one well-placed shot can save dozens of lives. And he showed that even the most unassuming piece of equipment, in the hands of a master, can tilt the balance of battle. His legacy endures not in grand statues or sweeping memorials, but in the quiet discipline of every marksman who picks up a rifle and remembers that skill, patience, and clarity win duels long before the trigger is pulled. The lesson he left behind is simple and timeless. Never underestimate the weapon you know best, and never doubt the difference one determined individual can make, even when the world laughs at him first.